The silver mirror reflected Amara's perfect features as she applied a final touch of crimson to her lips. In the vampire court, she was known for two qualities: her exceptional beauty and her unmatched skill at extracting information from unwilling sources. Today, Lucien required both. You understand the delicacy of this assignment. Lucien stood by the window of his private chambers, his aristocratic profile elegant. The official request is documentation of the mark. The council demands proof of what we're dealing with. Amara secured an ornate silver dagger in the folds of her gown. And the unofficial request? A sample of her blood. Lucien's voice remained steady, but Amara noted the subtle tension in his shoulders. Ismina requires it for her ritual. We must confirm whether this truly is the blood seal. And if it is, Amara asked, curious about his unusual interest in a human. Lucien's eyes darkened. Then RAVENGARDE faces a threat it hasn't seen in 3 centuries. A soft knock interrupted them. Cassian entered, his movements fluid and precise, carrying an ornate wooden box. Your diplomatic credentials, Lady Amara. He presented the box with a slight bow, and the instruments for obtaining the sample. Inside lay documents bearing Lucien's seal and a crystal vial with a silver needle. Remember, Lucien said, Kael must not suspect your secondary purpose. The wolves are already on edge with the Thornvale incidents. When am I to meet with the priestess after obtaining the sample? Amara asked. You won't, Cassian interjected smoothly. You'll deliver it directly to me at the border crossing. I'll ensure it reaches Ismine's hands. Lucien nodded in agreement. But Amara caught something calculating in Cassian's eyes. She'd known him for decades, long enough to sense when he wasn't sharing everything. Of course, she replied with practiced deference. As Lucien dismissed them, Cassian guided Amara toward the antechamber, his hand light at her elbow. A moment, if you will, he murmured, closing the door behind them. His voice dropped to a whisper. Lucien seems unusually interested in this human. Our king has his curiosities, Amara replied cautiously. Indeed, a shadow of disapproval crossed Cassian's perfect features. Still, we serve his whims, do we not? There was something in his tone, a subtle invitation to complicity that made Amara pause. Some might say he grows soft in his policies toward the wolves, Cassian continued. First the truce, now this fascination with a human in their territory. Careful, Cassian, Amara warned. Those words border on treason. His smile never reached his eyes. Merely observation, my dear Amara. Now, ensure the blood sample is uncontaminated. The ritual requires absolute purity. As he turned to leave, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that Cassian wasn't merely serving Lucien's interests, but her loyalty was to her king, not his ambitious second. Rhea stood at the window of her chamber, no longer guarded, but still very much a gilded cage. Mara had brought her fresh clothes, a deep green dress that complemented her dark hair and simple leather boots. Not exactly her style, but better than the hospital gown from her fragmented memories. The vampire emissary arrives today, Mara said, arranging Rhea's hair into a simple braid. Kael wants you present but protected. Protected or displayed? Rhea asked sharply. Her mark had been pulsing all morning, like a second heartbeat beneath her skin. Mara's fingers stilled. Both, perhaps. The vampires demanded to see you, and refusing would break protocol. But Kael won't let you out of his sight. A knock at the door announced Dorian, his expression as severe as ever. The Alpha requests your presence in the Great Hall, he said, his eyes tracking across Rhea's shoulder where the mark lay hidden beneath fabric. The vampire delegation has crossed into our territory. As they descended the stone staircase, Rhea noticed the increased security warriors positioned at every entrance, hands never far from their weapons. Is this normal for diplomatic visits? She asked. Nothing about you is normal, Dorian replied bluntly. You've upset a balance that's held for decades. Before she could respond, they entered the Great Hall. Kael stood at its center, flanked by council members, commanding in his formal black attire. His eyes found hers immediately, something possessive flashing in their amber depths. The memory of their kiss flooded back, his hands gripping her waist, the heat of his mouth against hers. the jolt when her mark activated. Rhea forced the thoughts away, though the persistent warmth in her lower belly proved harder to dismiss. A horn sounded from the courtyard. The vampires had arrived. Amara noticed every detail as she entered the werewolf stronghold. The ancient stonework, the strategic positioning of guards, the scent of wolf lingering in every corner. Her escort, a grim-faced warrior named Liam, led her delegations through corridors clearly designed for defense rather than beauty. They emerged into a great hall, illuminated by towering windows and blazing hearths. At its center stood Kael Stormpelt, every inch the alpha in his bearing. Beside him, a dark-haired woman watched the proceedings with unusual confidence for a human. So this is the mysterious Rhea, Amara thought. She doesn't look like the vessel of ancient power Lucien fears. Alpha Stormpelt, Amara greeted, offering a formal bow. I bring greetings from King Lucien Nightshade. Lady Amara, Kael acknowledged. RAVENGARDE's western territory extends its welcome, though we question the urgency of this visit. Amara smiled, her fangs deliberately hidden. The Vampire Council has concerns about your guest. The barrier breach alone warrants investigation. Her gaze shifted to Rhea, assessing. The human met her eyes without flinching, unusual, since most humans instinctively avoided direct eye contact with vampires. This is Rhea, Kael said. She's under pack protection. Amara noted the possessive edge in his voice. Interesting. The Alpha has developed attachments. A pleasure, Amara purred as she continued to stare at Rhea. I've heard so much about you. Wish I could say the same, Rhea replied, her tone cool. Dorian stepped forward, ever the vigilant beta. Perhaps we should move to the council chamber for formal discussions. Of course, Amara agreed, though King Lucien has specifically requested visual confirmation of the mark the human bears. For the council records, a tense silence followed. Rhea looked to Kael, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Very well, Rhea said, turning to expose her right shoulder as she lowered the fabric. The mark was unmistakable, a circular pattern of interlocking symbols that seemed to pulse with inner light. Amara had seen it only in ancient texts, but there was no mistaking the blood seal. She felt a momentary chill. Lucien's concerns were justified. Satisfied? Kael asked sharply. The council will be interested in my report, Amara replied, her mind already working on how she would obtain the blood sample. Now shall we discuss the terms of my stay? The formal dinner that evening was an exercise in supernatural politics. Rhea sat at Kael's right, uncomfortably aware of Amara's calculated glances. The vampire emissary had been assigned chambers in the East Wing, as far from Kael's quarters as protocol would allow, but her presence permeated the castle. Tell me, Lady Amara, Kael said, turning to face her. How fares the hospital network? We've heard concerning rumors. Amara's smile remained perfect, but Rhea caught the momentary tension. Minor regulatory complications. Nothing King Lucien can't resolve. Strange, Dorian commented. How auditors suddenly take interest after decades of operation. Bureaucracy moves in mysterious ways, Amara replied lightly. Much like the barrier that should have kept a human out of Ravengard. Her eyes slid to Rhea. Perhaps you remember something more about your arrival. Any unusual circumstances? Rhea felt the mark warm against her skin. Only darkness and then waking here. Such a pity. Amara leaned forward. Memory is so fragile in humans. Perhaps King Lucien's techniques could help recover what's lost. Rhea remains here, Kael stated flatly, his hand suddenly covering Rhea's on the table. The protective gesture wasn't lost on anyone present. Amara's laugh was musical. Alpha Stormpelt, your hospitality extends beyond duty. One might almost suspect personal interest. The subtle flirtation in her tone made Rhea's stomach tighten inexplicably. She pulled her hand from beneath Kael's, uncomfortable with the possessive display. I'm not a territory to be claimed, she said quietly. Kael's eyes met hers, something like apology flickering in their depths. Amara observed the exchange with evident interest. Indeed not, the vampire agreed. You're something far more valuable, though you may not yet understand why. Before Rhea could respond, the great hall doors burst open. A rain-soaked warrior stumbled in, blood streaking his temple. "Alpha," he gasped. "We found a body at the western perimeter, human, drained of blood." The hall erupted in murmurs. Kael rose immediately, his expression thunderous. "Dorian, with me," he commanded. "Lady Amara, you will remain here under escort." The vampire's face registered genuine surprise. "You cannot possibly think..." "I think," Kael cut in, "that a human corpse with vampire marks appears the day your delegation arrives. Coincidence strains credibility." As guards moved to flank Amara, Rhea stood. "I'm coming with you." Kael turned, conflict evident on his features. "This isn't..." "My mark reacts to supernatural events," she interrupted, a half-truth based on instinct. "I might sense something your warriors miss." After a tense moment, Kael nodded. "Stay close to me." As they left the hall, Rhea felt Amara's eyes following them. Calculating, assessing. Whatever game the vampire played, it was far from over. Rain lashed against them as they reached the forest clearing. Pack warriors had formed a perimeter around the body, their expressions grim. Rhea stayed close to Kael, the mark beneath her cloak throbbing painfully. The victim, a man in his 30s, wearing the dark clothing typical of Thornvale residents, lay sprawled beneath a massive oak. His throat bore the unmistakable puncture wounds of vampire fangs. But something else caught Rhea's attention, a silver pendant, half buried in the mud beside him. Another moonstone fragment, Dorian noted, carefully retrieving it with gloved hands, like the one the captured hunter carried. Kael crouched beside the body, examining the wounds. "These aren't feeding marks. They're too savage, too deep. This was done to send a message. The rogues," Dorian suggested. "Victor's faction has been growing bolder." "Who's Victor?" Rhea asked. "A vampire exiled for opposing the truce," Kael explained. "He leads those who reject Lucien's authority and my own." As Rhea moved closer to the body, her mark flared with sudden heat. She gasped, images flooding her mind. Lab lights, blood samples. A voice saying, "Oracle descendant confirmed." She staggered, and Kael caught her arm. "What is it?" Rhea blinked, disoriented. "I knew him. He was at the facility, one of the Thornvale researchers." Kael's expression darkened. "You're certain?" She nodded, the fragmented memory crystallizing. "Dr. Mercer, he supervised the blood tests when they first brought me in." Dorian examined the victim's pockets, extracting a plastic ID card. "Julian Mercer, Thornvale Research Division." He looked up sharply. "How did you remember that?" "The mark," Rhea murmured. "It's like it unlocked something." "The Thornvale hunters aren't just breaching our borders anymore," Kael said grimly. "They're being hunted themselves. By rogues who shouldn't know they exist," Dorian added, the implication hanging heavy in the rain-soaked air. Kael turned to his warriors. "Double the border patrols. I want tracking teams searching for any scent trails. And send a messenger to Lucien's territory immediately." As the warriors dispersed, Rhea felt a sudden dizziness wash over her. The world tilted strangely, edges blurry. "Kael, I need to..." The rest of her sentence dissolved as darkness claimed her. Rhea blinked awake in her chamber, momentarily disoriented. Mara stood beside her bed, applying a cool cloth to her forehead. "Welcome back," the healer said. "You gave the Alpha quite a scare. What happened?" Rhea asked, struggling to sit up. "You fainted at the scene. Kael carried you back himself." Mara helped her upright. "He's been in council for the past hour, dealing with the implications of the body." Rhea frowned. "Hour? But we just..." She glanced at the window. Seeing the position of the moon had significantly changed. "How long was I unconscious?" "Nearly 30 minutes, Mara replied. "Though you've been back almost an hour." A cold feeling settled in Rhea's stomach. 30 minutes unaccounted for, beyond the unconsciousness. What did I do during that time? Mara gave her an odd look. "You were here resting. I've been with you since they brought you in." But something in the healer's expression suggested uncertainty. Before Rhea could press further, the door opened and Kael entered, his presence immediately filling the room. "Leave us," he ordered Mara, who nodded and quietly departed. When they were alone, Kael approached the bed, his expression unreadable. "How much do you remember?" Finding the body, recognizing him, then nothing until waking just now. Rhea studied his face. "What happened that you're not telling me?" Kael sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "When you regained consciousness in the forest, you weren't yourself." Fear prickled along her spine. "What does that mean? You spoke differently, moved differently." His eyes searched hers. "You called me Wolf King, and said the seal weakens with each death. Then you collapsed again." Rhea's hand moved instinctively to her shoulder, feeling the mark pulse beneath her fingertips. "Someone else took control of me. Or something awakened within you," Kael suggested. Astrilda believes Nixara's essence might be bound to the mark itself. The thought of another consciousness sharing her body sent a wave of violation through Rhea. "I won't be a vessel for someone else's spirit." "We'll find answers," Kael promised, his hand covering hers where it rested on the mark. The contact sent warmth spiraling through her body, momentarily banishing her fear. But somewhere deep in her consciousness, Rhea felt an ancient presence stirring, one that whispered. This was merely the beginning.
Next on RAVENGARDE Chronicles, The Awakening.
The morning would bring revelations that would shake Rhea to her core. In the ancient chambers of Astrilda, the pack's eldest priestess, she would learn the truth about her bloodline and why Thornvale had hunted her so relentlessly. The mark on her shoulder was more than a mysterious symbol. It was the key to a 300-year-old seal that held back something far more dangerous than any vampire or werewolf. But knowledge came with a price. As Nixara's spirit stirred more strongly within her, Rhea would discover that some allies might not be what they seemed. In the shadows of Ravengard, a traitor moved with deadly purpose, and the fragile peace between the supernatural factions hung by a thread. The blood seal was weakening, and with it, the barriers that protected them all.